It's the show of the week. Welcome back to Show of the Week, the weekly segment where we talk musical theater and where I wear flannel. This week, we're listening to Wonderland. That's right, I said the musical Wonderland, and for reasons that I'll explain in a second, I'm hoping that you haven't listened to this one yet. So this musical's from 2011. You probably know Frank Wildhorn. He's done Jekyll and Hyde and a bunch of other things. It's also by Jack Murphy and Gregory Boyd. It premiered in 2011 after several out-of-town tryouts, and I don't want you to know that much more about it right now. Unless, of course, you already know about it, and maybe you've listened to an old Jim and Tomic episode where we talked about it, but never mind that. Probably you don't know this show, and that's because, well, last week I was accused of running this show of the week like a digital classroom, and I accept that accusation, and so we're going to treat this like a real book club, a real exercise in thinking and talking about musical theater and analyzing it. And so I would like us to engage in this exercise. And like, no pressure if you don't want to. I'm not your real dad. I'm not your teacher. So if you just want to watch this, that's fine. But if you want to play along, here's what I need you to do right now. Open up a YouTube comment, wherever you are right now, and I need you to write down two things. Don't have to be full sentences. Spelling doesn't count. One, what do you know right now about Alice in Wonderland, or about this musical? What is your prior knowledge going into this piece? This is particularly interesting to me because, especially nowadays, a lot of people have engaged with Alice in Wonderland in a variety of different adaptations, and most people, I would wager, haven't engaged in this piece through its primary source as their first point of entry. I think nowadays people are more likely to have seen one of the many Disney adaptations or other adaptations of this piece and not have read the original novels. So what do you know about Alice in Wonderland? Short sentence. Here's my experience with it. Second pre-listening bullet point that you're going to write in this comment right now is make one called shot. You know you're about to listen to a musical that is about Alice in Wonderland. What's one thing you think is going to happen? Be ambitious or don't, but this is a wonderful thing to come back to later after you listen to the thing to unpack where your brain was before you experienced this thing. Still with me? Good. Excellent. Once you put this in a comment, you can hit post. Before you listen to this show, there's one thing you're allowed to do. You're allowed to watch a short trailer for this show. I know for me, it is helpful to have some kind of essence or visualization in my mind of what a show might look like or feel like before I go into a listening exercise. So there are a bunch of trailers for this show. I'll put, if I can, I'll link one up in the thing, or I'll put it down in a description. Watch a short thing. Try not to be too spoilery, but just enough to give yourself like a palette, a flavor, a visual touchstone to know what this whole thing is going to look like as you listen to it. Good. You've made the comment with your two things, your preconceived notions and your called shot. You've watched the visual. Excellent. Here's where I'm going to upset the YouTube algorithm gods, because I'm going to tell you to stop watching this video early and go listen to that piece. Go listen to Wonderland. Find the one with that album art. That's the one we're all listening to. And after you listen to it, you're going to come back. We're going to talk about it, and you can edit your YouTube comment to add more context. But first, go listen to it. I'll wait. Did you do it? Okay, good. Welcome back. What did you think? Go find your comment. I know YouTube comments suck. Good luck. And edit your comment below what you've typed already. And one or two sentences. What are your first impressions of this show? How did it strike you? Do you feel like it did well? Do you feel like it didn't do well? Were there moments that stuck out as being especially interesting or puzzling? What's, if you had to summarize in one or two sentences, what is your initial reaction to this before you hear what I think about it, before you read the comments about it? Do your best to, don't look at them as you scroll past. What's your gut reaction? Write that down, save that comment so that you know what your initial reactions are before they are flavored by anyone else's thoughts. Okay, you did that? All right, let me tell you. Wonderland, 2011, did not do very well on Broadway. The reviews of this were terrible, to say the least. It played for about a month, was nominated for no Tony Awards, and then closed after a month. Hasn't seen a lot of big action. There was a UK revival, touring revival in 2017 that went on tour for a bit, but closed down because of some drama about uh, vendors and like very unspecified stuff. But it seems like as well there it was not doing well, and even then they tried to rewrite it to fix it. Before we get too far, sorry that I made you listen to a show that didn't do well. I find this show fascinating because I encountered this show as a CD from my library as a young person. And I dig the music in this show. I find it engaging and interesting. Frank Wildhorn is often pegged as having a very pop music style. A lot of the bad reviews call him out as such. I find this a very interesting descriptor for him because, like, musical theater, as long as it's been around, has been in conversation with pop music, right? It, for a long time, was a way that pop music, popular music, came into existence. A lot of the old jazz standards started as pieces of musical theater, and that's why they were popular. And often, when this phrase, pop music is thrown around about Wildhorn, it is thrown around as like a veiled insult almost. Like, he just writes pop music. And one, there's nothing wrong with pop music. Pop music is fun and engaging and interesting and can have depth and can be musically complex. And musical theater has been doing pop music forever. So, like, what's the problem? Like, it still blows my mind every day. Not every day, but like you go to Starbucks or the grocery store and you hear some remix of Wicked or Hamilton on the canned music in the store. Like, musical theater is pop music and has been for a long time. What was I talking about? The music is very catchy and very interesting to me, and you have permission to go watch more of this show if you'd like to put together what's kind of going on in this thing. A lot of the numbers, a lot of the musical pieces are very engaging on their own, but the book of this show, the plot of this show is all over the place. And reports seem to say that that's why it had so many out of town tryouts in Tampa and a couple other places. And, it's hard to unpack what's actually going on there. No one writes down, like, show's bad, mom, we're still working on it in letters these days. But, like, that seems to be the case. They were working on it, they were trying to fix it. They brought in a couple book doctors along the way and just couldn't hash it out, and it never landed. I find this interesting on two levels. One, uh, I was a children's lit minor for a while in college. Not for a while. I finished it. So I guess for a while. Alice in Wonderland is a very interesting children's literature piece because it's one of the first pieces that for children that is not explicitly didactic in nature. It's not like something like Pinocchio, which would have come before it in time, and which is, don't lie or your nose will grow bigger, or like, don't cheat or you'll turn into a donkey, right? Watch out, children. This is how fairy tales were for centuries before that. And Alice in Wonderland is for children, ostensibly. It's this, romp of this girl who gets lost, but doesn't have any explicit lesson in it, which makes it stand out as a milestone on that marker of children's literature. And there's a lot to unpack about Lewis Carroll and what his intent was of the book and blah, 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 blah. We don't have time to get into that. All that to say, Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, the books, also have kind of winding, meandering plots because of this, right? They're not trying to teach you something. They're not trying to bring you to a satisfying moral end. And so, on the one hand, a musical that seems incohesive at best seems like a great adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. But whenever you get an artistic reinterpretation, as we often get in musical theater, we are the art of the reimagining of different stories. You ask the question, why this story now in this way? Why are we taking this thing, transforming it in this way, and turning it into that thing? And I think the fact that that question remains unanswered with the show is the reason, is like the fundamental flaw in how the book exists, in its incoherent, mismatched, mushed up nature. And like, how do I want to say this? There are kind of two things going on when people say the plot of this show doesn't make sense, specifically about Wonderland. On the one hand, there are just aspects of this show that are like difficult, if not impossible, to follow. Different characters show up at different times, and you don't know why they're there. Go watch a bootleg of it, and there's just in that sense, like just from an A to B to C, it isn't holding the audience's hand enough to give them a cohesive world, to give them a world that they can bang a pipe on and say, okay, I see this box, right? So that's the one part. And then the other part is our setup of expectation when we go in to see a piece of theater, right? We go in to see something, expecting to leave it having been entertained or challenged or having learned something, but like we expect some kind of transformation from the us before we enter the theater to the us leaving the lobby after the show. And a lot of that transformation depends on answering that question. Why this show? Why are these characters having this problem, and why did you spend millions of dollars to put them in beautiful costumes on stage and have them sing about it in front of an audience, right? We need it as an audience to be about something more than just the sake of doing it, right? We're trying to experience art, so we are seeking that transformation. We're seeking that challenge. And so we have a bunch of expectations that set that up. And like, this is why I wanted you to contemplate what your preconceived notions about this story is beforehand, right? Because that's what you're bringing into the theater, metaphorical or real, right? Is what do you know about this show beforehand, and how is it the show going to interface with those thoughts you've had before and confirm them, challenge them, or modify them in some way. That was rambling. Sorry, I didn't write a rubric for this. Anyway, go back to your comment. And now, based on all that, well, okay, free write. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Based on all that, what do you think about the show's abject failure? Do you think it was well deserved? Do you think it is a product of its time? Perhaps there is a reactionary swing against poppy musicals happening at the time. If you do explore more visuals of this show, do they remind you of anything of that time period? Going back and looking at this, there's a lot of this that rings very Wicked to me. There's a lot of this that rings very Shrek to me. I find both of those comparisons interesting and fascinating. I'm gonna have to unpack that for a little bit. Green people? I don't know. There is a lot of I guess my 2024 resolution is to stop using the word discourse so much, but I don't have any alternatives. A lot of conjecture around the Broadway flop, the show that did poorly, and a lot of this exists because people want to try and fix it, right? Finding a flop in the past that you can revive or change or modify or all of the above, and then bringing it back, feels like finding the pirate's hidden treasure that's been buried for 16 years. Oh, look, it's Merrily We Roll Along. And what's this? It's filled with gold, right? But I think those discussions often overlook that there are a lot more flops on Broadway than people think about. So many musicals never realize their capital, and like, not that it should all be about money, but this is how we kind of judge the success of the show, and certainly judges the longevity of it, so there's something to be explored there. And no one explores the flops that just flopped. No one thinks about the things that just did bad and then were forgotten. And I think there's value in looking at these things because they're not bad. There's a lot about this show that I really like. I also don't think you could revive this show. I think this show would be hard to fix. The proof might be in the pudding. I don't know a lot about the 2017 tour revival, but my spidey senses tell me that even the rewritten book, even some of the modifications didn't do anything good to help it get over that hump, whatever it is. And so you're stuck with this thing that by all measures didn't do well in a widely varied landscape of musical theater. So it begs the question, why? And I think if we can practice exploring what is good and what is bad about a piece that overall did badly, it makes us better artists. It's really easy to look at something successful and point out what makes it good, right? Um, there's often a lot of people who are already saying the same things, and you get stuck in an echo chamber about like, oh yeah, I agree, I agree. It's also really easy to look at something successful and pick apart its flaws, often because there aren't as many, and often because I don't know. It's again a reactionary thing, right? You're looking at something high on the mountain. And you're like, nah, screw that thing. Here's why I don't like it. I think it is much harder to unpack something that didn't do well, that we might describe as bad, but I don't like that kind of description. Things aren't as black and white as that. To find what was going to make it good, a lot of people had to see this thing and say yes to it, at least for a little while. What did they see in it? What did they think it might be? And what was it that was holding them back? Anyway, I've been rambling for far too long. Thank you for watching, as always. I was joking with my boyfriend about this, and it is hilarious to me. I have been hovering at just under 50,000 subscribers for like, I don't know, 1,000 years now, and subscribers on YouTube don't mean anything, and I don't actually care, except I care a little bit. It'd be really fun to pass 50,000. I'm so close. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, I know subscriptions on YouTube are borked these days, and you don't get served stuff based on your subscriptions anyway, but click the button. It'd be fun. It makes the numbers go up and it makes me like it. Your comments are what I care about anyway. Most of all, comment. Most of all, thank you for watching. Thank you to my patrons who are scrolling by my head somewhere. If you want to become a Patreon, head on over. I'll put a thing. All your support helps. All your joy and love helps. Thank you for welcoming me. Wow. I gotta learn how to talk on the internet again. Welcoming me back to the internet with such open arms that you all have had. And I'll see you next week. God, I hope that was recording.